Yong-woo is an autistic girl who couldn't speak a word until she was 5 years old. Her father is a widower, who chooses not to remarry and takes care of her alone. Her father was a law scholar, so her father had a lot of law-related books in the house. Her father felt very tired taking care of her alone, so he often left Yong-woo with his neighbors. However, the neighbor's husband is jealous of Yong-woo's father. Yong-woo's father was insulted by his neighbor's husband, and accused him of being a wife grabber. Seeing her father being shouted at and beaten, Yong-woo was frightened. Suddenly she talked about the criminal law of persecution. Yong-woo's father is surprised and happy. It turns out that Yong-woo can talk. Yong-woo likes to read her father's law books. She is an autistic child who is smart, has a strong memory. Yong-woo's father begins to focus on teaching law for Yong-woo. Apart from the law, Yong-woo likes whales, and can even memorize the types of whales starting from their shape, way of life, and everything about whales. Adult Yong-woo successfully graduated from Seoul National University, and got the highest grade score. She was accepted to work at the Han-Bata law firm. CEO Han recruits Yong-woo and places her in a team led by Myung-sok. At first Myung-sok refused Yong-woo, but he wanted to give Yong-woo a chance to show her abilities. Yong-woo's task in the first case is to defend and reduce the sentence of a grandmother, who used to be the wife of a neighbor who once beat her father. The grandmother was accused of killing her husband. In court, Yong-woo successfully defended the grandmother. But the grandfather eventually died. Because of her autism, Yong-woo cannot express her sad feelings. Even when she was injured, she didn't cry at all. She is also reluctant to be hugged by the grandmother who is her client, because Yong-woo does not like physical touch. One time, the law firm where Yong-woo worked got a civil case of compensation for an incident, where the bride's dress was removed while walking on the altar, and was seen by thousands of invited guests. It sounds easy if the plaintiff only asks for losses in the hundreds of millions of won. But who would have thought that the plaintiff wanted compensation of 1 billion won? According to the plaintiff's father, what happened at that time embarrassed the child and his family. At first, the team of lawyers from the Han-Bata law firm refused. However, because the plaintiff's father compared it to Tyson law firm, which is a rival of Han-Bata, CEO Han finally agreed that they could sue for compensation of up to 1 billion won. The investigation begins. Yong-woo and her partner Min-woo meet the bride. They asked questions regarding the background of the bride's relationship, and also how the wedding dress could come off. Then suddenly Yong-woo asked if the bride loves the groom. The bride's answer was suspicious. Later the bride said that they met after the groom's grandfather introduced her to his grandson and decided to marry them off. After they finished meeting the bride, they met the groom. The groom said that since the incident occurred, he has not seen the woman he married again, because the bride was depressed. The groom also said that the wedding might be cancelled. Meanwhile the other team, namely Junho and lawyer Soo-yeon, went to investigate the hotel where the wedding was. They pretend to be a couple who are about to get married. While in the car, they compose a love story so they both look like real lovers. Suddenly Soo-yeon has a stomachache. Arriving at the hotel, Soo-yeon asked Yong-woo to get trousers, but it turned out that what Yong-woo had brought were sleeping pants. Finally Soo-yeon decided that Yong-woo would replace her to meet the hotel manager with Junho. Junho and Yong-woo met the hotel manager. They both pretend as lovers. Yong-woo chose a wedding dress that was the same as the wedding dress in the case, then asked the news on TV about the dress. Why did the dress fall off? The hotel did not want to give an answer. Yong-woo tried on the wedding dress. When the curtain was opened, Junho was amazed to see Yong-woo's beautiful appearance. The two looked like a pair of lovers in love. Soo-yeon, who was staying in the toilet, overheard a female employee talking there about her colleague who was fired because of the wedding dress incident. Soo-yeon immediately called Junho. It seems that the hotel has made a big mistake, because the wedding dress was accidentally damaged due to the carelessness of the employee who was fired, so they replaced it with a similar dress, but a larger size. Hanbada's lawyers succeeded in cornering the defendant. However, when they were close to winning the lawsuit, suddenly the bride as the plaintiff withdrew her lawsuit. This made her father very angry. The bride says that she doesn't want her father to rule her life all the time, and she also says that she likes other women. Her childhood friend is her girlfriend. Meanwhile, the CEO of Tyson law firm named Sumi receives news that the bride's father has withdrawn all legal cooperation with Tyson, and switches to Hanbada law firm. She finds out that Yong-woo successfully solved the 1 billion won case. Sumi was interested in Yong-woo's talent. The next case is the murder of an older brother by his younger brother. His younger brother is called Jong-hoon. When their father and mother returned home at night, Jong-hoon's screams could be heard from their room. Jong-hoon shouted the word "die" and "stop it." Jong-hoon was hitting his brother who was lying on the floor. His father and mother immediately approached to stop the action. However, it turned out that his brother had died. Jong-hoon is a child with autism, where he cannot control his own emotions and is difficult to communicate with. Myung-sok's lawyer invites Yong-woo to accompany him. According to him, fellow autists can understand each other. Yong-woo and Junho went to the crime scene. They found a diary of Jong-hoon's brother. The diary recorded that Jong-hoon's brother was depressed and had repeatedly attempted suicide but was thwarted by Jong-hoon. The discovery of this diary informed Jong-hoon's father and mother, but they did not believe that their child had committed suicide. Jong-hoon's older brother is a medical student at Seoul University and is known to be very smart. Jong-hoon's parents tried not to show this diary in court, because according to them, it was a disgrace. Then they find another way. They tried to talk to Jong-hoon again, to ask for his testimony, but it turned out to be difficult. Various attempts were made to make an approach by singing songs, but this was not successful. Once Yong-woo asked if his brother committed suicide, and Jong-hoon said yes. During the first trial, the doctor said that Jong-hoon had autism, so he couldn't understand the ethics of life. Then the prosecutor pointed out that Yong-woo is also autistic, the same as Jong-hoon, who doesn't understand the ethics of life, so she shouldn't be able to become a lawyer. At first the prosecutor's words did not affect Yong-woo. She continues to look for evidence to be able to free Jong-hoon. Yong-woo pretended to hang himself. Junho, who suddenly saw this, was shocked, and immediately saved her. From that experiment, Yong-woo became more and more convinced that this was a case of suicide. Jong-hoon's father doesn't want Yong-woo to attend the court. The final result of the court was that Jong-hoon was found guilty, but because of his autism, Jong-hoon was sentenced to parole. With a heavy heart, Yong-woo understood, but she became unsure of her abilities because of her autism. She felt useless because she could not help her clients. Because of this, she decided to make a letter of resignation and then packed away from her office. One day, in the village of Gwangdong, Dong-sum was visited by his two older brothers, Dong-gil and Dong-si. They are brothers, but haven't seen each other in a long time, and it seems they don't really get along either. Dong-sum works as a farmer. His two older brothers are university graduates and work in the city. The purpose of Dong-gil and Dong-si's arrival was to ask for the paddy fields to be sold and divided equally. The paddy field was a gift from their parents to Dong-sum. Dong-sum's brother determines the division of land at 50% for the eldest child, 30% for the second child and 20% for the third child, namely Dong-sum. They said that this provision was already a Korean inheritance law. They asked Dong-sum to stamp the memorandum as soon as possible, because there was already a company that wanted to buy the land. Dong-sum was not aware that in the memorandum it was written that there were tax obligations that had to be paid by Dong-sum. The tax amount was greater than the share of land that Dong-sum acquired, so that Dong-sum was in debt of 260 million won. Dong-sum's daughter, Dong-rami, tells her troubles to her best friend Yong-woo. Yong-woo says she is no longer a lawyer, asks Dong-rami to come to Hanbada. Myung-sok doesn't want to take on this case because Dong-rami doesn't have any evidence, except for the memorandum that was stamped by her father. Dong-rami urgently begs for his help. Then Myung-sok asked Yong-woo to help her best friend, and he refused Yong-woo's resignation, so Yong-woo remained as Han-bata's lawyer. In the first trial, Dong-sum was very easily defeated by lawyers Dong-gil and Dong-si, because they didn't have any evidence at all. Dong-sil also testified falsely that they never mentioned the law of inheritance. After the first trial was over, Yong-woo, Junho and the Dong-sum family went to the village of Gwangdong to meet the person who was thought to be a witness, namely the head of the village who was at the scene at the time. At first the village head stated that he was ready to testify in court, but when he was in court the village head gave false testimony. It is suspected that the village head received bribes from Dong-gil. Dong-sum is angry with the village head and becomes frustrated because he lost the trial. Suddenly Yong-woo got a brilliant idea. Dong-rami, Dong-sum and her mother come to the ritual ceremony to commemorate the death of their parents at Dong-gil's house. Dong-rami purposely irritates uncle. Her uncles beat and abuse Dong-rami and her father. As the commotion broke out, Dong-rami's mother called the police to come to the scene. In the next trial, the assault carried out by Dong-gil and Dong-si was used as evidence. Besides that, Yong-woo as a lawyer changed the charge by mentioning several articles of the law relating to the assault that Dong-gil and Dong-sil committed during the trial period of the case. Thus Dong-sum has the right to change the contents of the memorandum, which is very detrimental to him. Finally the trial was won by Dong-sum. But because Dong-sum is not a greedy person, he still wants to share the inheritance evenly, especially since his two older brothers have also apologized for their mistakes. His elder brother admitted that he was in debt. Junho asked Yong-woo to go to the beach and watch the sunset. Junho said that he would continue to support Yong-woo to become a good lawyer. The next case is the copyright of an ATM machine belonging to Ahwa Company, a client of Han-bata. Yong-woo and Min-woo are assigned to handle this case. Min-woo views Yong-woo as his rival for a contract extension at Han-bata, so he uses any means to make Yong-woo appear incompetent. At trial, evidence was shown that the creator of the ATM machine was not the Ahwa Company, but the leader's company, and it had been published in America, but the company went bankrupt. If the leader's company has made it, then Ahwa Company cannot have a monopoly on sales of ATM machines, so the Jeomgang Company is allowed to manufacture and sell ATM machines as well. Yong-woo, who doubts her client's honesty, conveys this to Min-woo, but Min-woo ignores her. They had an argument, then a loud noise from outside caught their attention. It turned out that in the corridor outside, the plaintiff and the defendant were arguing. Min-woo asked Yong-woo if she could tell the difference between the two people who were arguing over who was telling the truth. That evening, Yong-woo asked Dong-rami how to find out if other people were telling the truth to her. Dong-rami replied that Yong-woo just needed to look that person in the eye. But that is certainly very difficult for a person with autism like Yong-woo. Dong-rami suggests looking between their eyebrows. Junho was playing basketball with Min-woo. Suddenly Min-woo received a call and belittled the autistic Yong-woo in the conversation. This annoyed Junho and he deliberately played rough basketball with Min-woo. The next day, Yong-woo looked for ways to find out if someone was lying or not. She told Junho. Looking into Junho's eyes, Yong-woo asked if Junho liked her. Junho was surprised by Yong-woo's question. He did not answer the question. At Ahwa Company, Yong-woo is surprised to see Ahwa's director injured. But despite being injured, the director took them to meet the R&D manager. During interrogation, Yong-woo noticed signs of dishonesty towards the R&D manager who invented the ATM machine. Suddenly Min-woo calls and says that there is nothing that can prove that the leader's company owns the patent. Then Yong-woo asked the R&D manager to testify in court and coached him on how to testify in court. While in court, the R&D manager testified according to Yong-woo's teachings. The R&D manager tearfully told how his team found and built the machine. Considering that the R&D manager is a theater actor, he can do the fake acting well. The next day, Yong-woo received a letter from the CEO of Jeomgang. Yong-woo rushed to Myung-sok's room, but he wasn't there. Then Yong-woo headed to Min-woo's room, and he read the letter. which contained an explanation that the ATM machine was made by the leader's company, and had already been published in America. If Aiho manages to monopolize that product, then his company will go bankrupt because it will no longer be allowed to manufacture and sell ATM machines. CEO Jeong Gang hopes that Hanbot's lawyers will act honestly and stand up for the truth. Rumors about Aiho's courage in demanding in court that they were the creator of the ATM machine soon spread to investors, so that the banks terminated the cooperation contract with Jeong Gang and turned to Aiho. Furthermore, new evidence was found in a thrift store, namely an ATM machine made by the leader's company. After comparison, it turns out that the two products from leader's company and Aiho are the same. Even though lost in court, CEO Aiho is still happy, because he won the business war. Banks are willing to enter into contractual ties with Aiho company. Apparently what happened was according to CEO Aiho's cunning scheme. This made Yong-woo unhappy, she felt guilty, and sadly and embarrassed she told this to Junho. Meanwhile at the Tyson Law Office, Sumi meets with person from the Secretary of State's office. He had come to pick up Sumi's candidacy documents as a candidate for Minister of Law. In addition, he also asked about rumors that Sumi had children out of wedlock. Sumi denied it. To be continued in part 2. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, so you don't miss the next part.